Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the how and why stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to give their take on today's top stories, and we try to have just a little bit of fun as well. Going to be hard to have fun this morning with the temperature so cold, folks. We talked about this weather impact alert. We've been shouting about it really all week long, and here it is. The cold air is in place. So this morning it's on the cold side, folks. Temperatures in the 30s, and we'll spend much of our time in the 30s today. We may top off right around 40 degrees. We'll be there briefly before those temperatures drop back off. Some of the coldest air tonight ain't going to be in place. Temperatures will be dropping down into the 20s for lows. So we are looking at a freeze warning that takes effect at 7 o'clock tonight, and it will last until 10 a.m. on Tuesday. Once we rise above freezing on Tuesday, which will be toward mid-morning and into early afternoon, then we won't look back. 49 degrees will be the high temperature Tuesday. You're looking at 37 for a start temperature on Wednesday. Under mostly sunny skies, temperatures will get back into the 60s. We're looking at temperatures in the 70s by the end of the week, but we stay dry all week as well. All right, we're looking at major developments overnight in the ongoing federal government shutdown. The Senate took a procedural step toward ending the shutdown, voting 60-40 to advance a compromising funding package. They agreed to the package would reopen much of the government through a continuing resolution that funds most agencies until late January. It does not include an immediate extension of the health care subsidies under the Affordable Care Act tax credits. A final bill must still clear the Senate in full, then go to the House of Representatives for passage, then be signed by President Trump. We'll have more on the moves in a live report from Washington, D.C. coming up in about 8 minutes from now. All right, Georgia officials are moving to comply with the latest federal directive on food aid. The State Department of Human Services says November SNAP benefits will be capped at roughly 65% of the normal amount. This follows a Supreme Court ruling that halted full payments nationwide. Families whose regular payments date have already passed will see partial deposits by tomorrow, while others will follow the state's normal schedule. Despite the move by the state, pantries across Georgia continuing to be slammed with longer lines and raising food requests. Back with us is Julie, the executive director of Feeding Georgia. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. You've been in food assistance for years now. Have you ever seen the instability like this before?
Well, I will say that the food banks are an emergency food assistance network. So certainly over the years, we've seen shutdowns, we've seen political battles that happen outside of what we're doing, and our assistance continues. The work that we do every day continues regardless of what's happening. But as far as SNAP, that is unprecedented. So the amount of pressure that our families are facing and those we serve are facing right now is something we have not seen before. It's incredibly confusing, certainly for our families and for us. And when that happens, we react as quickly as we can to get the food to those who need it most.
And so we had you on the show a couple of weeks ago, and you saw the changes then. What has changed since? Now we've been in this shutdown the longest we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think as we had mentioned before, we saw longer lines, greater demands, people showing up to food banks for perhaps the first time in their lives, realizing they needed the assistance. And for us as food banks, trying to keep the shelves stocked has been a challenge. So as fast as we can get food on the shelves, in some instances, it's flying off the shelves. So trying to restock and trying to make sure our families are supported and our food bank network is supported has been an unprecedented challenge.
What kind of help do you need, or what's the most kind of help you need from the public right now?
I'm going to tell you that as our heads were down working so hard, there was nothing like picking up our heads and looking around and realizing the community had come forth. So the community had showed up, and that's what we need. We need the government to reopen first and foremost, and we need the full support of the community. And I cannot say on behalf of the network enough thank yous for all of the support we are receiving. We need it. We need it now. We need all of it, and we are putting it to use as fast as we get it. So the community's outpouring of support is absolutely a great thing to see. As we're entering into the holiday season, it's awfully nice to see the kindness.
Yeah, it's a good thing right there, and hopefully that continues. Now, the USDA memo orders states to issue roughly 65% of normal SNAP benefits. How big of an impact is that reduction for Georgia families?
It's hard to say. It's hard to be an expert right now on SNAP with all of the changes going back and forth. As you mentioned, we do know that the partial payments were issued over the weekend. We know our state partner agencies are working so hard to make this happen and make sense of the guidance that they're getting, which is changing daily. We do know that our recipients are receiving 65% partial payments depending on their maximum allotment that they receive each month. So it's a complex calculation. We know it will take time to get that out. We also know families who are dealing with this uncertainty are going to have to spend a lot of time recovering, just like the food banks will have to recover and put more food on the shelves. They will have to do the same. If they were borrowing money to get through this time, if they were doing extra things to get through this time, it's going to take everybody a minute to recover. Yeah.
Has the Georgia Department of Human Services given any direction on how to handle this partial payment directive?
Every day. They're trying as hard as they can to give us as much guidance as possible. But it's hard. It's tough to know what to think when things change as they are. But we do know that everyone who is in charge of the program is working very hard to do as much as they can, as quickly as they can. Yeah.
If the appeals court takes weeks, let's say, to act, how do food banks sustain the pace through Thanksgiving and into December?
Community support. That's exactly what we need. Just quick math, for every one meal that food banks are able to provide, SNAP provides at least 6. So if we're sending out about $4.5 million worth of food to recipients each month, or to all the folks that we serve each month, SNAP is doing about $250 million. So that's about a $200 million gap that food banks simply are not prepared to meet. There's just simply no way we can do that. So we are counting on the full support of the community, as we're seeing now, to get us through this and to get everyone who needs food meals on their table.
Yeah. Julie, I got about 30 seconds left here. What's your biggest fear, and what gives you hope as we head toward the holidays?
My biggest fear is this will last longer and that our families will go without for longer, especially at the busiest time of the year for food banks, and as families are facing the holidays without food and with the anxiety they're facing. The thing that we are heartened most about is just how many people truly care. And we cannot say enough thank yous. As I mentioned, we need everyone's support. It has been wonderful to see it. It is making an impact as soon as we get it. And so all we can say is thank you, and we hope for better days.
Julie, thanks so much for all you do for our community, and thank you for joining us this morning. All right. All right, folks, you're watching The Take. We'll be back right after this. Stay right there. All right, back to the shutdown now with NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. And good morning to you, Alice. We said earlier in the show, before the break there, that the good news is that it's getting this vote passed. The bad news is that we're still a few votes away from getting the government to open back up. Will the bill pass the Senate, and how likely is it that the House will stand in the way?
Yeah, assuming that everything stands the way that it did last night when the senators headed home, it does seem that we're on track for a final vote to be approved in the Senate, potentially as soon as today. And then up next is going to be the House. The House is in recess, and members have to come back to Washington to vote. They've been in recess since September, so to some criticism from even, in fact, Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia has been complaining that her chamber has not been in session while all this has been going on. But as soon as the Senate votes to approve final passage, then there are 48 hours for House members to get back here. And so that gives you 3 days. It is certainly possible that this could all be wrapped up and President Trump could sign it into law by the end of this week if things stand as they are now. Yeah, you mentioned the president. He's showing some confidence that this thing could be coming near an end. What sort of maneuvering is the White House doing behind the scenes? So President Trump's role here has been interesting because he has stayed largely, as you said, behind the scenes. Typically in shutdowns, presidents have wanted to show kind of authority and show that they're doing everything possible to hold lawmakers' feet to the fire and to get them to reopen the government. But President Trump has not hosted Democrats at the White House since a since a failed meeting before this all unfolded. And he has certainly on social media and in interviews repeatedly blamed Democrats and just put the pressure campaign over and over on Democrats, and has encouraged Republicans to hold the line very firmly, to such an extent that we really arrived where we are now, where the Democrats who crossed over and joined Republicans essentially said the pain had gotten too bad in terms of SNAP benefits, SNAP low-income food benefits, that the administration just had made clear they were going to make it tough for folks to get those full benefits. And then as well on flights, things had gotten to a pain point that wasn't really working in the estimation of these Democrats. So we have now heard from Senator Markwayne Mullin, who's an Oklahoma Republican. He signaled that the White House had given this deal that passed overnight its blessing. So I think his role here was really just to kind of stay in the background, but stay firm, tell Republicans to stay firm, and now allow this measure here to move forward.
Yeah, it seems like once the Transportation Department put this Friday deadline to promise 10% cut in flights, that's when things really got moving a little bit, got ramped up. Are we still eyeing this as a finish line by the end of this week?
Yeah, it does seem that that's likely, and there are a number of factors that conspired here. That is one of them. Again, according to the Democrats who crossed over and pointing to these pain points, things getting more and more complicated in the airspace closing in on Thanksgiving. And the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, had made it clear that things could get even worse than that 10% cut that was scheduled to take effect on Friday, and that a lot of people, he said, who wanted to get home for Thanksgiving just wouldn't be able to. That was going to become untenable, and the food assistance was really becoming difficult, painful, real world, just too much to bear for a lot of Americans out there. And the Democrats who crossed over felt like that became a real tipping point.
All right, Alice, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks, stay right there where you are. We got plenty more stories for you coming up. This is The Take, and we're back right after this. Welcome back to the show. It's been a free tax filing tool that launched just 2 years ago by the federal government, but now the IRS is shutting down its direct file system. The IRS says just 296,000 Americans filed taxes through the direct file this year, representing less than 1% of total returns. The agency says it spent an estimated $10 to $20 per return to operate the program. Through it all, a federal report shows 86% of users say direct file increase their trust in the government. Let's bring in, as we always do every Monday, Andrew Pujols. I'm going to make you play baseball for some reason. I think that's what it is. But welcome back to the show, my friend. And talk to us. Are you surprised by these numbers, these low numbers?
Not at all, Chesley. Look, most Americans will go out and pay tax professional for tax preparation software, or tax return preparation, I should say. So I'm not surprised. And you got to also keep in mind that the IRS already has a free file tool, the IRS Free File, which partners with private companies like TurboTax, H&R Block, and such. So people are far more familiar with those free file tools than the direct file. I don't think the government did a great job of publicizing it and marketing it, in a sense, among other issues that existed.
You think it's a trust issue?
Partly. Look, I mean, if someone feels, if the consumer feels that the IRS is doing their tax return and there is sort of no separation there between them and the government, then yeah, I think a sort of a trust issue begins. Whereas if you go see a tax professional, yes, you are paying, but you feel like you're getting your money's worth, and you can ask questions and you can do things pretty much that you feel benefit you.
They're saying only 1% actually use it. How big of a setback is it for that 1% to have to now go and pay to file a tax return?
Yeah, and you don't necessarily need to go and pay and file, right? Most of the people that qualified to use direct file were those that had very simple returns. Let's make no mistake about it. It's not for complicated taxpayers with high-level tax matters. It's someone who has a W-2, maybe a little bit of interest income, maybe a retiree with Social Security. There are other programs, other alternatives out there that are free. VITA, which is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, exists out there for elderly and retirees. So there's still other options out there that people can use and benefit from that they don't have to go pay.
Yeah. How much of a decision this is based on financial, which is what we're hearing, versus political?
I think a little bit of both, right? Part political, but part when you look at the numbers, you're spending $41 million a year to maintain a program that less than 300,000 Americans use. I mean, to me, it's just, evident that it probably doesn't make economical sense for the government. The 41 million could be better spent elsewhere.
Yeah. Is it in the IRS's benefit to have tools developed for folks to file, make it easier? I mean, do you think they'll now stop that, or will they try to develop something maybe better?
Well, there's the IRS Free File, which partners with 8 private companies such as Intuit, H&R Block, and others, right? So they have relationships already out there that can provide free or low-cost tax preparation options to consumers, to taxpayers. But overall, yeah, I think the IRS has a lot of challenges out there. Let's make no mistake about it. This government shutdown that we've had for the last 6 weeks is not going to help the upcoming tax season. The new tax legislation is going to complicate things. So the IRS can spend their time and their resources doing things that are better served Americans than trying to manage a free file tax preparation software that probably didn't launch very good. It cost about $41+ million based on the Ways and Means Committee report, and most people aren't going to use it.
Yeah, Andrew, Georgia was one of the states that were expected to expand the direct file access. How does this decision might affect the filers here locally?
Yeah, I think, look, if you're a retiree, a senior citizen, retired, look at other free options like VITA, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. It's a great program. It's been around for decades. It helps retirees and seniors basically for free with expert volunteers. If you're a military family, look at MilTax. MilTax basically is available for free to all military families, regardless of your income. And then there's also the free filing option with TurboTax and H&R Block. So there's many other options that Georgians can explore and not really have to spend a lot of money for tax preparation in the upcoming season. Gotcha.
If you were advising the IRS, what's one thing you would change, or a couple things you would change about this system to make it simpler for everyone?
Yeah, look, experienced personnel is what I would say. We got to go back to some of the basics and get people in line. Trying to cut the workforce doesn't really work out for Americans when we have less IRS, pretty much. Look, no one really likes the IRS. Let's not make a mistake about it and say that there's some love lost there. But overall, when the IRS personnel dwindles down to the levels we have now, and some of their good personnel are retiring or have retired, it puts a lot of pressure on operations, and it ultimately impacts all Americans.
All right, Andrew Poulos. Hey, have you ever played baseball?
Man, I wish I did, because if I did, I wouldn't be on the show every Monday morning.
My friend, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Take care, Chesley.
All right, stay with us, folks. We'll be right back right after this. Welcome back to the show. Open enrollment is now underway, but this year, millions of Americans shopping for health insurance on the Affordable Care Act marketplace are facing some of the biggest price jumps in years. Right now, the average ACA marketplace premiums are rising 26% nationwide, including 30% in the states using healthcare.gov. Enhanced federal tax credits expire at the end of the year. Without a renewal, those average payments could rise more than 100% in 2026. For people needing this coverage to start on January 1st, shoppers must enroll by December 15th. The open enrollment period runs through January 15th, 2026 on healthcare.gov. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this increase. We got Catherine Hempstead, the Senior Policy Officer for the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How significant are the premium increases compared to previous ACA enrollment years?
Oh, I don't think there's a precedent. I mean, the gross premium, which you mentioned before, the kind of premium that the insurers are charging is increasing a lot, 26 to 30%, and that is, I think, probably larger than ever before, although there have been some double-digit increases in the earlier years of the ACA marketplace. But I think the really salient thing for consumers is that their net premium is going to go up much more than that. They're going to go up like 100% or more, as you mentioned, more for some enrollees because of the expiration of these enhanced premium tax credits. So that means that the tax credit that put a wedge between what the insurers were charging and what consumers have to pay, that wedge is getting smaller. So consumers are going to face a big increase in the price that they're expected to pay.
Wow. Catherine, how concerned are you that we could see that uptick in uninsured rates this next year?
Oh, I'm very concerned. I mean, nationally, the CBO has estimated that something around 4 million people will become uninsured just because of these changes in the Affordable Care Act marketplace. And, I'm holding aside all the things that are happening in the Medicaid program and the other kinds of federal policy changes coming that, en masse, people have anticipated something more like 11 to 15 million people to become uninsured over the next 10 years. But just focusing on the ACA impact, I think there's going to be a sizable impact on uninsurance because many people are going to look at the higher prices and they're going to decide that they can't afford their coverage and they're going to drop their coverage. And, unfortunately, what happens when there's something like that is that healthier people are more likely to drop their coverage so that the people that stay in the marketplace are sick or use more services. And that's one of the reasons that the gross premiums have gone up, because insurers are sort of anticipating that, and that can kind of build on itself, and that market can then sort of become less healthy as time goes on if we continue to see those trends.
So what kind of practical advice would you give to customers who will see that sudden spike in their insurance premiums?
Well, certainly, we say this every year, and it's sort of more true and less true. Shop around. I mean, things are bad. There are some really negative developments that are not good for consumers, but you still should look around. Some people are going to be tempted to buy down to a lower actuarial value, like say go from a silver plan to a bronze plan, because that's a lower premium. But it's really important for people to keep in mind that that's going to come with more required out-of-pocket spending as you actually need care. So you might pay less per month for your premium, but then you're going to find you have a much larger deductible, a much larger maximum out-of-pocket. Your copays are going to be bigger, fewer things you're going to even be able to make a copay for. So then you're going to be asked to shell out more money when you seek care. And if you have a low income below 250% of federal poverty level, which is, like less than 40,000 for a single person, then if you go down to bronze, you're giving up this extra benefit called cost sharing reduction, which significantly lowers the amount of out-of-pocket spending you have to do, but you have to keep a silver plan to get those benefits. So, I mean, people have to do what they have to do. Some people are going to buy down to bronze because they just have to. And then, what's unfortunate then is as people live their lives and have other bills and stuff, they may find, I'm not really able to go to the doctor or use my insurance because the out-of-pocket expenditure is so high. So I think that's, in addition to the people that drop coverage, we're going to see more people who are sort of underinsured. And what goes along with that is people not getting the care they need or going into debt. There's a cascade of bad things that can happen when people have no insurance or not enough insurance.
Got it. Catherine Hempstead, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for your insight today.
Sure, it's a pleasure. Thanks.
Take care. We're back right after this. Welcome back. Georgia spends more than $23,000 a year to keep one person behind bars, but a new Georgia-based initiative is showing there's another way to change behaviors and rebuild lives. Joining us now is Chip Morris, founder and CEO of Pro Civica, I believe that's the way you say it. He'll correct me in a minute here, to explain how to educate, not incarcerate, and make a community safer. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
All right.
It is Pro Civica.
It is. Okay. All right. Very good. What do you want people to understand about the value of forgiveness, education, and the opportunity to rebuild a life?
Absolutely. Well, to start with, you've already mentioned the cost of recidivism. It's not just a financial cost. It's also a community cost, a family cost, an individual cost. So it's not just a judicial or financial issue. It's a broader issue. And we also, when we reduce recidivism, we're making the community safer as well. So there are a lot of benefits for empowering people to not reoffend and not end up back in the system. When people do end up in the system, oftentimes what they get is punishment, punitive, which is fine. It works for a while. But what we really want to do is empower people to make long-term change. So that's what education really does. It's not just talking to them about the law they broke, but how to not break it again.
Talk to me about your program then. What is the platform, and how does it create these new opportunities for these folks?
Yeah, absolutely. When we started this years ago, when as a clinician, I was trying to put together why were people coming back into the system. As a matter of fact, the judges I was working with were always saying, this material, is it really effective? Well, what it was high-level clinical material. So it was going over people's heads. So I had to figure out what was the missing link, and it was really connecting people back to their community. That's what Pro-Civica is. It's a behavioral civics model that puts together cognitive behavioral principles with what it means to live in a community of people. You put the two together, people begin to understand there's opportunity for me. So what Pro-Civica is a behavioral civic approach, but what really makes us different is we have put this online. And there's some skepticism about online education, but it actually makes a huge difference. Research shows this. It makes it accessible. So that's the big thing. People who are coming out of the court system, they're bombarded, they're trying to find work, they're, transportation, all these different things that are roadblocks to getting to the courses they need. So we offer it online. And research shows that it's more effective. They tend to hold on to that material longer. But our new system, our new program platform is cutting edge. So it not only gives the learner the ability to sign in, see the material we want to teach them, and have an impression on them, but also gives the court system and the probation officers a free, no-cost dashboard so they can monitor those classes. They can see the progress the person's making. They can send reminders and get the certificate at the end. And actually being online gives us the ability to add and change things and improve things as we go.
All right. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the insight on your program. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
All right, Chip. Take care. All right, folks, look at Decatur. You see the clouds overhead right now. We have, some sunshine out there, and I think we'll see it. But don't be fooled by that sunshine. It's not going to warm up all that much today. Temperatures are in the 30s starting off this morning. We'll stay in the 30s for much of the day. 40 for an afternoon high. Then we'll watch those temperatures fall back down to the 20s for overnight lows tonight. It's going to be one of the coldest mornings tomorrow. So keep the big coat handy, folks. You're really going to need that. All right, 10 years now, Emory University has quietly built a national lifeline for veterans healing from invisible wounds. Here to talk about the program is Dr. Barbara Rothbaum, a professor at the Emory Department of Behavioral Science. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for helping us honor our veterans.
Absolutely. When you meet a veteran, right, for the first time who's been carrying years of invisible wounds, what do you want them to know right off the bat? What do you want them to know right away?
I want them to know that treatment works. A lot of folks will tell us, I don't know what this is going to help. My life was ruined by what happened to me, and you can't change that. And that's true, but if they're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder or depression or substance use or misuse or traumatic brain injury, treatment does help.
Well, many veterans may be reluctant to reach out for help. What would you say to someone watching right now who's struggling but still is hesitant to reach out and take that first step?
It is very scary. And we have been able to serve more than 3,000 veterans and service members in our 10 years here. We are saving people's lives. We are giving kids their parents back. It really does work. I would encourage them to reach out, talk to us. We will evaluate them and develop an individualized evidence-based treatment program for exactly the problems that they're having. We bring them on site here at Emory for 2 weeks and give them more therapy in 2 weeks than most people get in an entire year. And it's effective therapy. We are saving people's lives. We're so honored to serve those who served.
Yeah, well, walk us through that real quick. What makes your 2-week program, your intense 2-week program, so effective?
We give people individual evidence-based therapy for the problems that they're having every single day. We are one of the best places in the world to treat post-traumatic stress disorder. We have a dedicated team that will do everything that they can for each individual veteran or service member. We're Emory, so we gather data on what we're doing to look at it, and 85% of the people that go through our program achieve very noticeable improvements that they maintain for a year after treatment.
You have you've been 10 years into the program. You got a celebration going on later this week. Tell us about it.
We are very excited. On Thursday, we're celebrating 10 years of healing and hope and service, and we can't wait for the next 10 years.
I was going to say, what's your biggest hope for the next 10 years?
For the next 10 years, we want to get even better. We have already revolutionized the treatment of PTSD, and we want to get even better. Everything doesn't work for everybody, and we want to figure out what each individual person needs and then be able to provide that. We want to help people take their lives back from PTSD and get back on track.
Dr. Barbara Rothbaum, thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks so much for sharing your program.
My pleasure.
All right. All right, folks, we'll be right back right after this. All right, welcome back. A major baby formula maker is pulling 2 batches after infant botulism cases have emerged. We bring in CNN's Caroline Woods, my friend, to join us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. Hello, Caroline.
Good morning, Chesley. I wish we could talk about a Bills win. I know you're an Eagles fan, but unfortunately not the case. Let's get to the details of this formula recall. The FDA and CDC have announced a nationwide recall of baby formula linked to a botulism outbreak. ByHeart Whole Nutrition powdered formula has been blamed for at least 13 botulism cases across 10 states. None so far in Georgia, though. Now, as of Sunday, no deaths have been reported, but all of the infants involved had to be hospitalized, according to the CDC. Botulism in infants can cause constipation, poor feeding, and difficulty swallowing, and if left untreated, it can worsen to total loss of muscle control and breathing difficulties. The formula lots in question were produced between April 23rd and May 6th. Full recall details are available on the FDA or CDC's websites. Chesley?
All right, Caroline, we're talking about flights being postponed or delayed, but we're also waiting for a major blast off to the red planet. Tell us about it.
Yes, from planes to rockets. Blue Origin's Mars mission was grounded by weather over the weekend, but it may get to launch later today. The New Glenn rocket was set to take off from Cape Canaveral Sunday before cloud cover forced a delay. It's expected to send 2 spacecrafts on a long course to Mars once it gets off the launch pad. Blue Origin rockets are designed to be partially reused to better control costs. However, in January, an attempt to land a booster during New Glenn's first orbital flight actually failed after its engines died and the rocket veered off course. A launch window for this latest mission is expected to open sometime this afternoon. Blue Origin is working with the FAA to avoid disrupting commercial air travel, which we know is already constrained by the government shutdown. So hopefully this won't cause more delays. Chesley?
No, we'll see. We'll see. All right, you got a big heads up for those who love Wendy's. They may be on the chopping block.
Yes, Wendy's is set to shutter hundreds of locations across the U.S. This is all part of its turnaround plan. The fast food chain CEO said up to 350 restaurants could close, but didn't provide any other details. He did say the sites chosen were those that consistently underperformed. This move follows a wave of around 140 closures late last year for the same reason. The chain says despite the need to reduce stores, sales of its new chicken tenders, called Tendies, news to me, has been strong. Some restaurants sold out before mass marketing efforts even began. This latest round of closures is expected to start before year's end and continue through next year. Tendies may be popular, but I'm all about the Frosty.
Ah, yes, indeed. I was going to say, I thought that was the most popular thing at Wendy's, Tendies. Wow, okay. So tomorrow's Veterans Day. That means plenty of businesses will be closed for the holiday?
Well, some businesses. Veterans Day is, as you said, tomorrow, November 11th. And although it is a federal holiday, most restaurants, grocery stores, and retailers will be open. But post offices will be closed. Chesley, UPS and FedEx and other major shippers will be operating, though. The stock market will open, but most major banks will be closed. And fun fact, Veterans Day dates back to November 11th, 1918. The truce between U.S. allies and Germany at the end of World War I was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. But Chesley, stock market's open, so I'll be working. I guess you're probably working too because the news never stops, right?
Never ever stops, Caroline. Never ever stops. All right, thanks a lot. Eagles play tonight, by the way, and always, as always, go Bills. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thanks a lot. All right, folks, we'll be back right after this. He's flown combat missions over Iraq and Afghanistan and led the Navy's elite Blue Angels through some of the most breathtaking maneuvers in the sky. Commander Frank Weiser has lived a life defined by precision, courage, and purpose. Now he's sharing what some of those experiences taught to him about leadership and resilience in a new book called Lead Solo, Learning Life's Vectors from an FA-18 Blue Angel Aviator. Commander Weiser joins us now. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, not a problem. Do you find yourself just sitting back and in amazement of the journey you've taken?
A little bit, actually. I'm very grateful. I would say that for sure. It's been an exciting adult experience to this point.
So I got to ask you this: what is it like to strap into a FA-18 Hornet, knowing you were at times flying just inches away from your teammates at 700 miles per hour?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, we use the analogy or the reference of we don't strap into it, we strap it on. And so it's a mind change where you put this 35,000-pound airplane on your back like a backpack. You strap into this incredible airplane, and really a weapon system, right? Because for us, if you're flying as a Navy fighter pilot, it's not about flying the airplane, it's about fighting the airplane. The airplane becomes your rifle, just like a Marine would hold his rifle. Mm-hmm. The airplane is our weapon, and we fly it and we fight it. Interesting way to put it there. All right, you described your career as a journey from precision flying to purpose living. What's the biggest vector change in your own life? You know, I'm grateful that the book was written because I'd given a speech at the Naval Academy, and the Naval Institute Press was there and asked if I could take this speech and then make it into a digestible book, 50 or 60,000 words, not a very long read, but use the lessons I'd had in the speech and kind of illustrate with more stories a similar book. And so what was really beneficial for me is I had this opportunity. I was surrounded by so many incredible men and women for a career. And it was a chance to celebrate them and talk about the ways that we work together and what I learned from them. But to your point, the military has some unique ways of doing things. It's not always better, but in some cases it is. And we definitely we've to some degree mastered trust. You know, I talk a lot about high trust, the idea that it's not just trusting someone to pay you back or to be somewhere when they say they will. It's trusting someone with your life and them trusting you with their life, and not just once, but over and over and over again. Yeah. And for me, trust is like a muscle. You can get better at it by exercising it. And it's hard, but even in business, as a leader, you have to if you're going to grow as an organization, you have to trust the people underneath you. But it makes you vulnerable to do so. So as we kind of worked through some of those concepts in the book, and I intended to illustrate these lessons by using real life stories, whether that's in the cockpit of the Blue Angel Air Show or behind the scenes of Top Gun Maverick. Yeah. How has your definition of leadership evolved from your early years of flying to where you are today? Yeah, well, that's a great question. I'd say leadership is easy to talk about. It's hard to do. And so it's really easy for anyone to look at their boss and say, oh, they should be doing this or that. But when you actually are in the seat, when you are in charge, it's always a lot more difficult than you anticipated. And so I think you need to be constantly assessing your own progress, but really the ability to admit your own mistakes, that weighs in the book fairly heavily. And the best leaders are the ones who are willing to say, I screwed that up and I made a mistake. And the Blue Angels do that better than just about any organization I've ever known, where we'll finish an air show, the entire team, not just the pilots, all of the officers will go into a room and one by one name everything they've done wrong. And in doing so, it's liberating, but it's also empowering in the sense that if we're trying to help each other grow, and I've already told you what I did wrong, now we work together to improve as individuals so that the whole group can improve. Yeah. But it takes a bit of confidence as the person in charge to raise your hand and say, I screwed that up. Wow. Well, is that the biggest takeaway you want readers to get from the book? I think so. I think that, you know, the sections on communication, on how you can be open about your mistakes, it takes courage to do that. I think that talking about dealing with adversity, naval aviation has a great way of dealing with adversity. And that is, before we ever get into an airplane, we've learned everything that can go wrong and what we do when it does go wrong. But in business, that doesn't really apply the same way. No, when you go into work today, you might not have thought of every single thing that might go wrong in the studio. And if it does go wrong, how you're going to adjust. And then after it does happen and you adjust to it, do you sit back down and debrief as a team and say, this is what happened. We handle it this way. We could have maybe done this a little bit better. And so I walk through how we cross that bridge as a Blue Angel team or in naval aviation, because I do think there's some really important takeaways that you can get from that.
Yeah. Did you know that this is what you were going to do with your life? Did you always know that you were going to be who you became?
No, certainly not. I grew up in Sandy Springs and was really excited to go to the Naval Academy, but very specifically to be a Navy SEAL. And that's what that was my chosen profession as a young man, and wanted that all the way up until the day they told me I wasn't going to be able to do that, actually, for 8 or 10 years of my life, to be laser focused on one goal. And so that actually weighs heavily into the book too. I have an entire chapter about failure, and it's probably the longest chapter because I've failed so many times. But it was important to say that, my career in the Navy started in my mind as a failure, and it actually went downhill from there even pretty fast too. But the takeaway for me from that is, as I look at the people who I really respect and admire, in almost every case, they would consider themselves failures. But the difference is they didn't fail and then quit or give up. They picked themselves up. They moved forward smarter and better for having failed in the first place. And so I personally, any success I've had has been because I failed and I wasn't afraid to fail again.
You've had so much success. I got 30 seconds left. What's the flight plan for the next chapter?
That's great. I'd like to, I'd want to get good feedback. I want to get a good debrief on the book. I've had great feedback so far. What I'm really happy about is that all the proceeds from this book go to an incredible charity that supports men and women and families of mishap victims. So from my perspective, hopefully the book is good, but also just buying it and reading it supports men and women that serve our country.
Commander Frank Weiser, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
All right, take care. Another look at your forecast plus my final take when we return. We're back right after this. And 11Alive weather impact alert for the cold that we have in place now. Came in last night. That cold air will be with us all day today, tonight into tomorrow morning as well, where we'll see tonight temperatures dropping down into the 20s for lows. So that's below the freezing mark, folks, which is why we have a freeze warning for much of our area today. Make sure you bring in those plants that you think that could die with temperatures that low. Also bring in the pets. Make sure you cover any exposed pipes as well. And of course, for yourself, bundle up, folks. You're going to need to. It's going to be brisk out there today because of the winds that we have. Temperatures will rise above the freezing mark on Tuesday and won't look back. 49 degrees will be the high temperature on Tuesday. Still a cold day. We'll be at 37 for an overnight low, still above the freezing mark. We'll hit 63 for a high on Wednesday, upper 60s on Thursday, and then we'll hit those 70s as we head into the upcoming weekend. Staying dry all week as well. Even into the weekend, models going back and forth on whether the rain will come late Sunday night or whether it'll come on Monday morning. Either way, that'll be our next best chance for the rain as that next system rolls in. Until then, we're dry and we're cold on the outside. Again, bundle up, folks. You're going to need to. 11Alive weather impact alert lasting until Tuesday mid-morning or early afternoon. All right, before we go, my final take. We just finished October, which is Cancer Awareness Month, and a simple blood cancer detection test that has not been approved by the FDA is gaining some popularity. It's called the Gallery Early Detection, or MCED test. It's a blood test that studies DNA fragments shed into the bloodstream, and it'll cost you about $1,000. Now, the test claims early detection of 50 types of cancer, meant to be a complement to the current screening that identifies lethal cancers. The big question is, will it be the test of the future? Well, it doesn't look likely anytime soon. Most medical professionals agree that sticking with the current method of screening, which in the United States is for breast, colorectal, prostate, cervical, and lung cancers. So if you are hoping to get out of that colonoscopy or mammogram, keep hope alive, I'd say, because it's not going to happen anytime soon. Until then, make sure you get tested, folks. All right? That's all we have for you today. Make sure you have a great day. Make sure you bundle up because it's cold on the outside, folks, and that cold air will be with us at least through Tuesday. We'll start warming it up toward the end of the week. Make it a great day.